Good afternoon from Sacred Space at Titania's Realm. It's, can't think what day it is, Sunday, the 1st of February 2026, and the time is 6:25 p.m. It's been a very hot day. It's currently 29 degrees here in Brisbane, Australia. So I thought I'd come in with the air conditioning and read you chapter 11, the Enchanted Archipelago. But as you can see, I'm fully made up, and apart from that dreadful cold sore, I've been out and had a couple of Jack Daniels and listened to some nice blues jam music, and I was out with my friends Robin and Peter and their beautiful little dog Coco, and met nice friend of theirs as well, and a younger couple came and sat at our table also, and they were very nice, and very nice atmosphere. So it's once a month, so I might try to go again next month, all being well. And just for a couple of hours, just to have an outing, really, get out of the house and be a little bit sociable, people of Earth. The bar staff there at the Morrison Hotel were very friendly when I asked for ice with my Jack Daniels, for an extra glass of ice. Didn't twinge or balk at all, just gave it to me, and I thought, that's nice. Usually when I order ice anywhere, they give you a bit of a weird look, as if to say, why are you watering down your drinks? But because it's very hot and I need to stretch my drinks out, number one, financially, and number two, look after my liver. Not that I have, alcohol related cirrhosis, but I do suffer from, an enlarged liver from years of very bad fucking diet, quite frankly. So, I have to be careful. So I just have 2 drinks, and then I drink glasses of ice, which is also nice and refreshing on a hot day. Even Robin saw that I was drinking ice. She said, what's that? I said, oh, it just stretches out the drink a bit more, and, I don't know what that schmutz is, a feather. And, it's refreshing. So I got her a glass of ice as well. So it's all very nice. We had a nice outing. So, sunset's not that far away. I've covered the birdie boys over already, but I've got the aircon on. I've closed all the doors in the house, hoping to get a little bit of aircon drifting down to their back room. It doesn't really make it reach that far, but it makes it a little bit cooler for them. It's a hellscape. It's just getting so hot. I'm going to have to, over the next 12 months, try and put a bit of money aside and buy another aircon for, I think, my bedroom, and I really need 2. What price would that be? 4 grand's worth, wouldn't it? 4 or 5 grand's worth. But I need to cool down this house. It's too much. I am due to get from Housing Commission. They want to install ceiling fans, but I don't actually think they'll make that much difference. It's just too scathing bloody hot. I mean, I got the fan going in there all the time. Doesn't do that much. So anyway, I'm worrying about something I can't change at the moment because I don't have enough money, but I'm going to have to start putting a little bit of money aside each pension day to towards that goal of getting a second air conditioner for the other end of the house, I think, because it's my work room as well, and my studio, and the birdies need to be kept comfortable during the night too. I mean, they're pet birds, but I don't want them dropping off their perch of heat exhaustion either. So, yes, I'll have to work around it somehow. Have to figure out a way around things. So, let us begin reading Chapter 11, The Enchanted Archipelago. As the summer grew hotter and hotter, we decided that it required too much effort to row the sea cow down the coast to our bathing bay, so we invested in an outboard engine. I will see they have the same problem, managing with the heat and working in the heat. Synchronicity that I was worrying about that, and it should be reflected in the story. But odd, isn't it? Sometimes I feel like the dimensions are all smashing together, and that's why we're having these constant Jungian synchronicities. Could be just a coincidence though. Right. The acquisition of this machine opened up a vast area of coastland for us, for we could now venture much farther afield, making trips along the jagged coastline to remote and deserted beaches, golden as wheat, or lying like fallen moons among the contorted rocks. It was thus that I became aware of the fact that, stretching along the coast for miles, was a scattered archipelago of small islands, some fairly extensive, some that were really outsized rocks, with a wig of greenery perched precariously on top. For some reason, which I could not discover, the sea faunae were greatly attracted by this archipelago, and round the edges of the islands and rock pools and sandy bays, the size of a large table, there was a bewildering assortment of life. I managed to inveigle the family into several trips to these islets. But as these had few good bathing spots, the family soon got bored with having to sit on sun-baked rocks while I fished interminably in the pools and unearthed at intervals strange and to them revolting sea creatures. Also, the islands were strung out close to the coast, some of them being separated from the mainland only by a channel 20 feet wide, and there were plenty of reefs and rocks. So guiding the sea cow through these hazards and making sure the propeller did not strike and break made any excursion to the islands a difficult navigational problem. Our trips there became less and less frequent, in spite of all arguments on my part, and I was tortured by the thought of all the wonderful animal life waiting in the limpid pools to be caught. But I was unable to do anything about it, simply because I had no boat. I suggested that I might be allowed to take the sea cow out myself, say once a week, but the family were, for a variety of reasons, against this. But then, just when I had almost given up hope, I was struck with a brilliant idea. My birthday was due fairly soon, and if I dealt with the family skillfully, I felt sure I could get not only a boat, but a lot of other equipment as well. I therefore suggested to the family that instead of letting them choose my birthday presents, I might tell them the things which I wanted most. In this way, they could be sure of not disappointing me. The family, rather taken aback, agreed, and then, somewhat suspiciously, asked me what I wanted. Innocently I said that I hadn't thought about it much, but that I would work out a list for each person, and they could then choose one or more items on it. My list took a lot of time and thought to work out, and a considerable amount of applied psychology. Mother, for instance, I knew would buy me everything on her list. So I put down some of the most necessary and expensive equipment. 5 wooden cases, glass-topped, cork-lined, to house my insect collection. It's funny, you know, I saw on Facebook Marketplace yesterday a man selling all these wooden boxes. Oh, my makeup's sweated in all sorts of weird directions, dear goddess. A man selling all these wooden boxes that he had kept a insect collection in, and they were $10 each, and I was tempted to buy some to keep my my stones that I buy for setting stones, keep them in the boxes. But then I thought, I don't really need them. I've already got, I don't have that many, and I've already got them in little boxes. But I just thought it would be cute to have, a set of matching boxes for my stones. And anyway, I thought about it. I did think about it for a while, but he was situated, way out past Mount Glorious, even further on a bit. And I thought, that's a long drive to go and buy $10 wooden boxes. But I was just amused because here we are reading about specimen boxes in the book, and then that should appear for sale on Marketplace. So another Jungian synchronicity, which I found it amusing, It's almost like whatever I'm thinking about or doing, it's being mirrored back to me out from the zeitgeist or the actual multiverse, or out in the real world, and another dimensionality, but in 3D real world dimensionality. It's a bit astonishing at times, to be honest. But anyway, 5 wooden cases, glass topped, cork lined, to house my insect collection. 2 dozen test tubes, 5 pints of methylated spirits, 5 pints of formalin, and a microscope. Margot's list was a little more difficult, for the items had to be chosen so that they would encourage her to go to her favourite shops. So from her I asked for 10 yards of butter muslin, which, by the way, it's surprisingly expensive to buy butter muslin these days. Went to buy some to use for when I make my lime vinegar, cleaning vinegar. You need to sift it, what's the word? Kind of sift it. And so I still had some muslin here, but I thought I might buy some more muslin for that purpose. But it's gotten expensive. I thought, oh, bugger it, I'll just use what I've got here. Well, the other thing I could do is buy, coffee filter papers. That would probably work too. But I was surprised how just simple things like that have gotten so expensive in recent years. Used to be cheap as chips, literally. 10 yards of white calico, 6 large packets of pins, 2 bundles of cotton wool, 2 pints of ether, a pair of forceps, and 2 fountain pen fillers. 'Twas, I realised resignedly, quite useless to ask Larry for anything like formalin or pins, but if my list showed some sort of literary leaning, I stood a good chance. Accordingly, I made out a formidable sheet covered with the titles, authors' names, publishers, and prices of all the natural history books I felt in need of, and put an asterisk against those that would be most gratefully received. Since I had only one request left, I decided to tackle Leslie verbally instead of handing him a list. But I knew I should have to choose my moment with care. I had to wait some days for what I considered to be a propitious moment. I'm pondering what I want for dinner, but then I realised I had a nice bowl of chips out at the Morrison Hotel. I don't really need dinner. It's like odd how I just move through life one meal at a time, focusing on the next meal. Never used to be like that, you know. I didn't care, food would just happen when it happened. Now I seem to be a bit attached to what next is going to be shoveled down my mouth and into my tummy, people of Earth. It's good that I have an appetite, though. I lost my appetite there a while back, which is highly unusual. And I tell you what, that freaked me out even worse, because it's so unusual. But anyway. I had just helped him to the successful conclusion of some ballistic experiments he was making, which involved tying, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze now, an ancient muzzle loader to a tree and firing it, here we go, oh, excuse me, and firing it by means of a long string attached to the trigger. At the 4th attempt, we achieved what apparently Leslie considered to be success. The barrel burst and bits of metal whined in all directions. Leslie was delighted and made copious notes on the back of an envelope. Together we set about picking up the remains of the gun. While we were thus engaged, I casually asked him what he would like to give me for my birthday. Hadn't thought about it, he replied absently. Examining, with evident satisfaction, a contorted piece of metal. I don't mind. Anything you like. You choose. I said I wanted a boat. Leslie, realising how he had been trapped, said indignantly that a boat was far too large a present for a birthday, and anyway he couldn't afford it. I said, equally indignantly, that he had told me to choose what I liked. Leslie said, yes, he had, but he hadn't meant a boat, as they were terribly expensive. I said that when one said anything, one meant anything. Ooh. Which included boats. And anyway, I didn't expect him to buy me one. I had thought, since he knew so much about boats, he would be able to build me one. However, if he thought that would be too difficult. Of course it's not difficult, said Leslie unguardedly, and then added hastily, well, not terribly difficult, but it's the time. It would take ages and ages to do. Look, wouldn't it be better if I took you out in the Sea Cow twice a week? But I was adamant. I wanted a boat, and I was quite prepared to wait for it. Oh, all right, said Leslie exasperatedly. I'll build you a boat, but I'm not having you hanging around while I do it, understand? You're to keep well away. You're not to see it until it's finished. Delightedly, I agreed to these conditions. And so, for the next 2 weeks, Spiro kept turning up with carloads of planks, and the sounds of sawing, hammering, and blasphemy floated round from the back veranda. The house was littered with wood shavings, and everywhere he walked, Leslie left a trail of sawdust. What a wonderful brother to make him a boat. Sweet. I found it fairly easy to restrain my impatience and curiosity, for I had at that time something else to occupy me. Some repairs had just been completed to the back of the house, and 3 large bags of beautiful pink cement had been left over. These I had appropriated, and I set to work to build a series of small ponds in which I could keep not only my freshwater fauna, but also all the wonderful sea creatures I hoped to catch in my new boat. Digging ponds in midsummer was harder work than I had anticipated, but eventually I had some reasonably square holes dug, and a couple of days splashing around in a sticky porridge of lovely coral pink cement soon revived me. Leslie's trails of sawdust and shavings through the house were now interwoven with a striking pattern of pink footprints. The day before my birthday, the entire family made an expedition into the town. The reasons were threefold. Firstly, they wanted to purchase my presents. Secondly, the larder had to be stocked up. We had agreed that we would not invite a lot of people to the party. We said we didn't like crowds, and so 10 guests, carefully selected, were the most we were prepared to put up with. It would be a small but distinguished gathering of people we liked best. Having unanimously decided on this, each member of the family then proceeded to invite 10 people. Unfortunately, they didn't all invite the same 10, with the exception of Theodore, who received 5 separate invitations. The result was that Mother, on the eve of the party, suddenly discovered we were going to have not 10 guests, but 46. The third reason for going to town was to make sure that Lucrezia attended the dentist. Don't mention the dentist, people of Earth. Anyway, I shouldn't laugh, it's not funny actually. It's another thing I'm going to need to deal with soon. Another battle. So sick of having to battle for every fucking thing. But never mind. Recently her teeth had been her chief woe, and Dr. Andrucelli, having peered into her mouth, had uttered a series of popping noises indicative of horror, and said that she must have all her teeth out, since it was obvious they were the cause of all her ailments. Dear Goddess. After a week's arguing accompanied by floods of tears, we managed to get Lucrezia to consent, but she had refused to go without moral support. So bearing her, white and weeping in our midst, we swept into town. We returned in the evening, exhausted and irritable, the car piled high with food, and Lucrezia lying across our laps like a corpse, moaning frightfully. It was perfectly obvious that she would be in no condition to assist with the cooking and other work on the morrow. What, having your teeth ripped out? Like, duh! Poor thing. Spiro, when asked to suggest a solution, gave his usual answer. Never's your minds, he scowled. Leaves everything to me. The following morning was... Don't mind me. The following morning, you can tell I had friends who were Greek, can't you? Quite very nice friends, don't get me wrong. But anyway. The following morning was full of incident. Lucrezia had recovered sufficiently to undertake light duties, and she followed us all round the house, displaying with pride the gory cavities in her gums, and describing in detail the agonies she had suffered with each individual tooth. I hope she didn't get dry sockets like I was getting from 2017 right up to 2020. By all the gods. Mustn't think about that. I don't know how I survived it. I really don't know how I survived it. It was very, very, very bad. At one point, the QE2 hospital accused me of being addicted to the codeine that I requested for the painful dry socket. I went, if you go up and call up to the dental hospital on the second floor, they can verify that I've recently had an extraction and that I'm not hypochondriac and that I am indeed suffering from a dry socket and that I am indeed writhing in fucking agony, and if you won't give me the pain relief, I will start screaming this hospital right down right about now. I am not an addict. They looked at me, leaned back, got on the blower, rang upstairs, nodded, gave me the script for the codeine. By all the gods, that was another simple thing they made me fight for like an animal when I just had a tooth extracted and I was writhing in agony. Actually, it was my second course of codeine. That's how painful it was. Oh, they were disgraceful. Then they threw out my patient file. That's how disgraceful they really are. Livid I was. Livid beyond belief. Don't know how I've survived it, to be honest. I really don't. I said that before, didn't I? It's astonishing. It's astonishing how badly I've been maltreated. It's why even for a simple thing like going to ask the mater to book in for the dermatology department, how I got myself into such an emotional wreck that I got a cold sore and upset tummy and other stress responses with my complex PTSD, because they just interrogate you and try and invalidate you and call you a liar when you say this is what needs doing. Or can you prove that you've had skin cancers? I said, would you like to have a look at my back? I'm covered in scars. Well, that doesn't mean they were skin cancers. It's how they speak to you like you're some kind of idiot. Have you had a diagnosis? Yes, by a skin clinic, multiple times. Biopsies, chunks of flesh being extracted from my back. Anyway, we mustn't go there. I'm not a hypochondriac. It's all very real and horrific and lived and experiential, and I'm kind of done with it all. Really am. Anyway, where were we? Paula Goretzia describing in detail the agonies of each individual tooth. My presence having been duly inspected and the family thanked, I then went round to the back veranda with Leslie, and there lay a mysterious shape covered with a tarpaulin. Leslie drew this aside with the air of a conjurer, and there lay my boat. Excuse me. I gazed at it rapturously. I've just realised why I get allergies when I'm sitting at this desk. It's a beautiful desk. I actually, sanded it back and varnished it. It's very beautiful. But it's a camphor laurel slab. And if I'm sitting here for any amount of time, I start sneezing and snuffling. And I've worked out it's from the fragrant smell coming up from the timber. That's how sensitive I am. It's ridiculous because it's beautiful. Do you want to see it? I showed it to you before, people of Earth. It really is quite beautiful. So it's an L shape. So here's one end of it with my lamp on there. And here I have the printer and the bits and bobs on that end. But I can't believe how I straight away start sniffling and sneezing, and it's just absurdist. Just absurdist. Well, the sun is going to go down now. I'm hoping to get my birdie boys out in the garden. Tomorrow's Monday, isn't it? So I have to if it's not raining, because Robin tells me that rain's forecast. If it's a nice day, I have to put them out in the garden tomorrow. They were not happy that I kept them in today, but it was just too hot. And I'm due to clean their cages, because I do it on Mondays. So, anyway, where were we? I gazed at it rapturously. It was surely the most perfect boat that anyone had ever had. Just move this down a bit. That will do, chook. Gleaming in her coat of new paint, she lay there, my steed to the enchanted Archipelago. The boat was some 7 feet long and almost circular in shape. Leslie explained hurriedly, in case I thought the shape was due to defective craftsmanship, that the reason for this was that the planks had been too short for the frame, an explanation I found perfectly satisfactory. After all, it was the sort of irritating thing that could have happened to anyone. I said stoutly that I thought it was a lovely shape for a boat, and indeed I thought it was. She was not sleek, slim, and rather predatory looking like most boats, but rotund, placid, and somehow comforting in her circular solidarity. She reminded me of an earnest dung beetle, an insect for which I have great affection. Leslie, pleased at my evident delight, said deprecatingly that he had been forced to make her flat-bottomed, since for a variety of technical reasons, this was the safest. I said that I liked flat-bottomed boats the best because it was possible to put jars of specimens on the floor without so much risk of them upsetting. Leslie asked me if I liked the colour scheme, as he had not been too sure about it. Now, in my opinion, the colour scheme was the best thing about it, the final touch that completed the unique craft. Inside, she was painted green and white, while her bulging sides were tastefully covered in white, black, and brilliant orange stripes. A combination of colours that struck me as being both artistic and friendly. Leslie then showed me the long, smooth cypress pole she had cut for a mast, but explained that it could not be fitted into position until the boat was launched. Enthusiastically, I suggested launching her at once. Leslie, who was a stickler for procedure, said you couldn't launch a ship without naming her, and had I thought of a name yet? This was a difficult problem, and the whole family were called out to help me solve it. They soon clustered round the boat, which looked like a gigantic flower in their midst, and racked their brains. "Why not call it the Jolly Roger?" suggested Margot. I rejected this scornfully. I explained that I wanted a sort of fat name that would go with the boat's appearance and personality. "Arbuckle," suggested Mother vaguely. That was no use either. The boat simply didn't look like an arbuckle. "Call it the Ark," said Leslie, but I shook my head. There was another silence while we all stared at the boat. Suddenly, I had it, the perfect name. "Bootle, that's what I'll call her." "Very nice, dear," approved Mother. I was just about to suggest the bum trinket, said Larry. "Larry, dear," Mother reproved. "Don't teach the boy things like that." Excuse me. I turned Larry's suggestion over in my mind. It was certainly an unusual name, but then so was Bootle. They both seemed to conjure up the shape and personality of the boat. After much thought, I decided what to do. A pot of black paint was produced, and laboriously, in rather tricky capitals, I traced her name along the side. The Bootle Bum Trinket. Oh, there it was. Not only an unusual name, but an aristocratically hyphenated one as well. In order to ease Mother's mind, I had to promise that I would refer to the boat only as the Bootle in conversation with strangers. The matter of the name being settled, we set about the task of launching her. It took the combined efforts of Margot, Peter, Leslie and Larry to carry the boat down the hill to the jetty, while Mother and I followed behind with the mast and a small bottle of wine with which to do the launching properly. At the end of the jetty, the boat bearers stopped, swaying with exhaustion, and Mother and I struggled with the cork of the wine bottle. "What are you doing?" asked Larry irritably. "For heaven's sake, hurry up. I'm not used to being a slipway." At last, we got the cork from the bottle, and I announced in a clear voice that I christened this ship the Bootle Bum Trinket. Then I slapped her rotund backside with the bottle, with the unhappy result that half a pint of white wine splashed over Larry's head. Look out, he remonstrated. "Which one of us are you supposed to be launching?" At last they cast the Bootle Bum Trinket off the jerry with a mighty heave, and she landed on her flat bottom with a report like a cannon, showering seawater in all directions, and then bobbed steadily and confidently on the ripples. She had the faintest suggestion of a list to starboard, but I generously attributed this to the wine and not to Leslie's workmanship. "Now," said Leslie, organising things, "let's get the mast in. Margot, you hold her nose. That's it. Now, Peter, if you'll get into the stern, Larry and I will hand you the mast. All you have to do is stick it in that socket." So while Margot lay on her tummy, holding the nose of the boat, Peter leaped nimbly into the stern and settled himself with legs apart to receive the mast, which Larry and Leslie were holding. "This mast looks a bit long to me, Les," said Larry, eyeing it critically. "Nonsense! It'll be fine when it's in," retorted Leslie. "Now, are you ready, Peter?" Peter nodded, braced himself, clasped the mast firmly in both hands, and plunged it into the socket. Then he stood back, dusted his hands, and the Bootle Bum Trinket, with a speed remarkable for a craft of her circumference, turned turtle. Peter, clad in his one decent suit which he had put on in honour of my birthday, disappeared with scarcely a splash. All that remained on the surface of the water was his hat, the mast, and the Bootle Bum Trinket's bright orange bottom. "He'll drown! He'll drown!" screamed Margot, who always tended to look on the dark side in a crisis. Nonsense! It's not deep enough, said Leslie. I told you that mast was too long, said Larry unctuously. It isn't too long, Larry snapped irritably. That fool didn't set it right. Don't you dare call him a fool, said Margot. You can't fit a 20-foot mast onto a thing like a wash tub and expect it to keep upright, said Larry. If you're so damn clever, why didn't you make the boat? I wasn't asked to. Besides, you're supposed to be the expert, though I doubt if they'd employ you at Clydeside. Very funny. It's easy enough to criticise, just because that fool. Don't you call him a fool? How dare you? Now, don't argue about it, dears, said Mother peaceably. Well, Larry's so damn patronising. Thank God he's come up, said Margot in fervent tones, as the bedraggled and spluttering Peter rose to the surface. We hauled him out, and Margot hurried him up to the house to try to get his suit dry before the party. The rest of us followed, still arguing. Leslie, incensed at Larry's criticism, changed into trunks and, armed with a massive manual on yacht construction and a tape measure, went down to salvage the boat. For the rest of the morning, he kept sawing bits off the mast until she eventually floated upright, but by then the mast was only about 3 feet high. Leslie was very puzzled, but he promised to fit a new mast as soon as he'd worked out the correct specification. So the bootle bum trinket, tied to the end of the jetty, floated there in all her glory, looking like a very vivid, overweight Manx cat. Spiro arrived soon after lunch, bringing with him a tall, elderly man who had the air of an ambassador. This, Spiro explained, was the King of Greece's ex-butler, who had been prevailed upon to come out of retirement and help with the party. Spiro then turned everyone out of the kitchen, and he and the butler closeted themselves in there together. When I went round and peered through the window, I saw the butler in his waistcoat, polishing glasses, while Spiro, scowling thoughtfully and humming to himself, was attacking a vast pile of vegetables. Occasionally, he would waddle over and blow vigorously at the 7 charcoal fires along the wall, making them glow like rubies. The first guest to arrive was Theodore, sitting spick and span in a carriage, his best suit on, his boots polished, and, as a concession to the occasion, without any collecting gear. He clasped in one hand a walking stick, and in the other a neatly tied parcel. Aha! Many happy returns of the day, he said, shaking my hand. I have brought you a small memento, small gift, that is to say, present to commemorate the occasion. On opening the parcel, I was delighted to find that it contained a fat volume entitled Life in Ponds and Streams. I think you will find it a useful addition to your library, said Theodore, rocking on his toes. It contains some very interesting information on general freshwater life. Sorry, I should emphasize that. General freshwater life. Gradually the guests arrived, and the front of the villa was a surging mass of carriages and taxis. The great drawing room and dining room were full of people talking and arguing and laughing, and the butler, who to Mother's dismay had donned a tailcoat, moved swiftly through the throng like an elderly penguin, serving drinks and food with such a regal air that a lot of the guests were not at all sure if he was a real butler or merely some eccentric relative we had staying with us. Down in the kitchen, Spiro drank prodigious quantities of wine as he moved among the pots and pans, his scowling face glowing redly in the light from the fires, his deep voice roaring out in song. The air was full of the scent of garlic and herbs, and Lucrezia was kept hobbling to and fro from kitchen to drawing room at considerable speed. Occasionally she would succeed in backing some unfortunate guest into a corner and, holding a plate of food under his nose, would proceed to give him the details of her ordeal at the dentist, giving the most lifelike and repulsive imitation of what a molar sounded like when it was torn from its socket, and opening her mouth wide to show her victims the ghastly havoc that had been wrought inside. More and more guests arrived, and with them came presents. Most of these were, from my point of view, useless, as they could not be adapted for natural history work. The best of the presents were, in my opinion, 2 puppies brought by a peasant family I knew who lived not far away. Oh, how cute is that? 2 puppies, though. It's a big commitment. One puppy was liver and white, with large ginger eyebrows, and the other was coal black with large ginger eyebrows. As they were presents, the family had, of course, to accept them. Roger viewed them with suspicion and interest, so in order that they should all get acquainted, I locked them in the dining room with a large plate of party delicacies between them. The results were not quite what I had anticipated. For when the flood of guests grew so large that we had to slide back the doors and let some of them into the dining room, we found Roger seated gloomily on the floor, the two puppies gambolling round him, while the room was decorated in a fashion that left us in no doubt that the new additions had both eaten and drunk to their heart's content. Larry's suggestion that they be called Whittle and Puke was greeted with disgust by Mother. But the names stuck, and Whittle and Puke, they remained. Oh, that's a shame, isn't it? They deserve much nicer names than that. Oh, never mind. Still the guests came, overflowing the drawing room into the dining room, and out of the French windows onto the veranda. Some of them had come thinking that they would be bored, and after an hour or so they enjoyed themselves so much that they called their carriages, went home, and reappeared with the rest of their families. The wine flowed, the air was blue with cigarette smoke, and the geckos were too frightened to come out of the cracks in the ceiling because of the noise and laughter. In one corner of the room, Theodore, having daringly removed his coat, was dancing the Calamatiano with Leslie and several other of the more exhilarated guests, their feet crashing and shuddering on the floor as they leaped and stamped. The butler, having perhaps taken a little more wine than was good for him, was so carried away by the sight of the national dance that he put his tray down and joined in, leaping and stamping as vigorously as anyone in spite of his age, his coat tails flapping behind him. Mother, smiling in a rather forced and distraught manner, was wedged between the English padre, who was looking with increasing disapproval at the revelry, and the Belgian consul, who was chattering away in her ear and twirling his moustache. The Spiro appeared from the kitchen to find out where the butler had got to, and promptly joined in the Calamatiano. Balloons drifted across the room, bouncing against the dancers' legs, exploding suddenly with loud bangs. Larry, out on the veranda, was endeavouring to teach a group of Greeks some of the finer English limericks. Puke and Whittle had gone to sleep in someone's hat. They must have been very tiny puppies. Dr. Andrucelli arrived and apologised to Mother for being late. "It was my wife, Madame. She has just been delivered of a baby," he said with pride. "Oh, congratulations, Doctor," said Mother. "We must drink to them." Spiro, exhausted by the dance, was sitting on the sofa nearby, fanning himself. "What?" he roared at Andrucelli, scowling ferociously. "You gets another's babies?" "Yes, Spiro, a boy," said Andrucelli, beaming. "How many's you gets now?" asked Spiro. "6. Only 6, said the doctor in surprise. Why? You ought to be ashamed of yourself, said Spiro in disgust. 6, gollies, carrying on like cats and dogses. But I like children, protested Andrucelli. When I got married, I asks my wife how many she wants, said Spiro in a loud voice. And she says, 2. So I gives her 2, and then I gets her sewed ups. 6 childrens, honest to gods, you makes me wants to throws. Cats and dogses. At this point, the English padre decided that he would most reluctantly have to leave, as he had a long day ahead of him tomorrow. A mother and I saw him out, and when we returned, Andrucelli and Spiro had joined the dancers. The sea was dawn calm, and the eastern horizon flushed with pink, when we stood yawning at the front door and the last carriage clopped its way down the drive. As I lay in bed with Roger across my feet, a puppy on each side of me, and Ulysses sitting fluffed out on the pelmet. That's the hour. I gazed through the window at the sky, watching the pink spread across the olive tops, extinguishing the stars one by one, and thought that, taken all round, it had been an extremely good birthday party. Very early next morning, I packed my collecting gear and some food, and with Roger, Whittle, and Puke as company, set off on a voyage in the Bootle Bum Trinket. The sea was calm, the sky was shining out of a gentian blue sky, and there was just the faintest breeze. It was a perfect day. The Bootle Bum Trinket wallowed up the coast in a slow and dignified manner, while Roger sat in the bows as lookout, and Whittle and Puke ran from one side of the boat to the other, fighting, trying to lean over the side and drink the sea, and generally behaving in a pathetically landlubberish fashion. The joy of having a boat of your own, the feeling of pleasant power as you pulled on the oars and felt the boat surge forward with a quick rustle of water, like someone cutting silk, the sun gently warming your back and making the sea surface flicker with 100 different colours, the thrill of wending your way through the complex maze of weed-shaggy reefs that glowed just beneath the surface of the sea. It was even with pleasure that I contemplated the blisters that were rising on my palms, making my hands feel stiff and awkward. I'd forgotten that. Yes, the blisters on your hands when you're rowing a dinghy could be very painful indeed, people of Earth. Though I spent many days voyaging in the Bootle Bum Trinket and had many adventures, there was nothing to compare with that very first voyage. The sea seemed bluer, more limpid and transparent. The island seemed more remote, sun-drenched and enchanting than ever before. And it seemed as though the life of the sea had congregated in the little bays and channels to greet me and my new boat. 100 feet or so from an islet, I shipped the oars and scrambled up to the bows, where I lay side by side with Roger, peering down through a fathom of crystal water at the sea bottom, while the Bootle bum trinket floated towards the shore with the placid buoyancy of a celluloid duck. As the boat's turtle-shaped shadow edged across the seabed, the multicoloured, ever-moving tapestry of sea life was unfolded. In the patches of silver sand, the clams were stuck upright in small clusters, their mouths gaping. And sometimes, perched between the shell's horny lips, here would be a tiny, pale ivory pea crab, the frail, soft-shelled, degenerate creature that lived a parasitic life in the safety of the great shell's corrugated walls. It was interesting to set off the clam colony's burglar alarm. I drifted over a group of them until they lay below, gaping up at me, and then gently edged the handle of the butterfly net down and tapped on the shell. Immediately, the shell snapped shut, the movement causing a small puff of white sand to swirl up like a tornado. As the currents of the shell's alarm slid through the water, the rest of the colony felt them. In a moment, clams were slamming their front doors shut, left and right, and the water was full of little whirls of sand drifting and swirling about the shells, falling back to the seabed like silver dust. Interspersed with the clams were the serpulas, beautiful feathery petals, forever moving round and round, perched on the end of a long, thick, greyish tube. The moving petals, orange, gold and blue, looked curiously out of place on the end of these stubby stalks, like an orchid on a mushroom stem. Again, the serpulas had a burglar alarm system, but it was much more sensitive than the clams. The net handle would get within 6 inches of the whirlpool of shimmering petals, and they would suddenly all point skywards, bunch together, and dive head first down the stalk, so that all that was left was a series of what looked like bits of miniature hosepipe stuck in the sand. Thirsty again. I guess it was a very hot day, wasn't it, today? Incredibly hot. Where did I put the water? Starting to drift away in Manatee land and Titania's realm, where we have eternal sunshine of a spotless mind, fairies, angels, good folks, Prince Charmings, princesses, dragons, and other magical creatures, unicorns, pegasi, griffins. Life is forever beautiful and fun and gentle. I needed that. Brought me back to the room, people of Earth. Back in the room. Here we go. On the reefs that were only a few inches below the water, and that were uncovered at low tide, you found the thickest congregation of life. In the holes were the pouting blennies, which stared at you with their thick lips. I don't know what a blenny is. I'm assuming it's something like an oyster. I've no idea. Maybe a fish of some kind. Yes, it's a fish because they have fins, which stared at you with their, well, at least I admit when I don't know, people of Earth, which stared at you with their thick lips, giving their faces an expression of insolence as they fluttered their fins at you. In the shady clefts, among the weeds, the sea urchins would be gathered in clusters, like shiny brown horse-chestnut seed cases, their spines moving gently like compass needles towards possible danger. Around them the anemones clung to the rocks, plump and lustrous, their arms waving in an abandoned and somehow Eastern-looking dance in an effort to catch the shrimps that flipped past, transparent as glass. Rooting in the dark underwater caverns, I unearthed a baby octopus who settled on the rocks like a Medusa head, blushed to a muddy brown and regarded me with rather sad eyes from beneath the bald dome of its head. A further movement on my part, and it spat out a small storm cloud of black ink that hung and rolled in the clear water, while the octopus skimmed off behind it, shooting through the water with its arms trailing, looking like a streamer-decorated balloon. It's very elegant how octopuses do that, isn't it? Except when they grab you on the ankle and won't let go. It's a bit bloody terrifying for a 7-year-old, but, well, just another day in paradise, people of Earth. There were crabs too, fat, green, shiny ones. Oh, had a little twitch there. The body keeps the score. No, it's just a random twitch. There were crabs too, fat, green, shiny ones on the tops of the reef, waving their claws in what appeared to be a friendly manner. And down below, on the weedy bed of the sea, the spider crabs with their strange, spiky-edged shells, their long, thin legs, each wearing a coat of weeds, sponges, or occasionally an anemone which they had carefully planted on their backs. Everywhere on the reefs, The weed patches, the sandy bottom, moved hundreds of top shells, neatly striped and speckled in blue, silver, grey and red, with the scarlet and rather indignant face of a hermit crab peering out from underneath. They were like small, ungainly caravans moving about, bumping into each other, barging through the weeds, or rumbling swiftly across the sand among the towering clam shells and sea fans. The sun sank lower, and the water in the bays and below the tottering castles of rock was washed with the slate grey of evening shadow. Slowly, the oars creaking softly to themselves, I rowed the Bootle Bum Trinket homewards. Whittle and Puke lay asleep, exhausted by the sun and sea air, their paws twitching, their ginger eyebrows moving, as they chased dream crabs across endless reefs. Roger sat surrounded by glass jars and tubes in which tiny fish hung suspended, anemones waving their arms, and spider crabs touched the sides of their glass prisons with delicate claws. He sat staring down into the jars, ears pricked, occasionally looking up at me and wagging his tail briefly, before becoming absorbed once again in his studies. Roger was a keen student of marine life. The sun gleamed like a coin behind the olive trees, and the sea was striped with gold and silver when the Bootle Bum Trinket brought her round behind, bumping gently against the jetty. Hungry, thirsty, tired, with my head buzzing full of the colours and shapes I had seen, I carried my precious specimens slowly up the hill to the villa, while the 3 dogs, yawning and stretching, followed behind. And I'll come back tomorrow, no doubt, with chapter 12, The Woodcock Winter, which is, let's see how long it is. If it's not very long, I'll carry on. No, it's a whole hour and a half video again tomorrow. And then it follows with a few pages of conversation. So I'll probably read chapter 12, The Woodcock Winter, and the conversation, which seems to signify the end of a part of the book. And yes, that shall be mañana. Hasta mañana, till we meet again. Beautiful people of planet Earth and all other interdimensional entities of love, light, truth, and I'm grateful and appreciative that we didn't get any strange spiritual interruptions today, although I'm feeling heavy again, but that's probably just fatigue, because I got terribly excited about going out today, and then it was incredibly hot. But I had a lovely cuddle with Coco, and they're Robin and Peter's little tiny little part poodle, part Shih Tzu, black curly haired little dog. She's gorgeous and she loves me. She always lies on my arms and lays her head on my shoulder, just like a baby might. And I get terribly clucky because I miss my dog and cats and cute furry animals that I can actually cuddle. Like I love my birds, they're lovely birds, but we're not at the stage where they can sit on my shoulder and we can cuddle like I used to do with my Charlie. So, you know, it is what it is. It'll probably happen one day or not at all. And I'm not going to, you know, forcibly train them. Just let them fall in love with me at their own pace. And they have improved, but I do miss having animals that I can cuddle. I'm very tempted to go to the RSPCA and get myself a rescue dog, but the problem is the ongoing expense of vets, which I can't really afford, and the worry of them getting sick. And if you get a rescue dog, you don't know what illnesses it might already come pre-programmed with, and it's a risk. And so anyway, I've decided against it, but I'm tempted. I am tempted. Nice to have a doggy in bed with me to snuggle up to again, or a cat. But same deal with cats. It's not the problem of the feeding so much, it's keeping up with the very expensive flea and tick control, which poisoned my dog, gave him a splenal mass, for the love of all the gods. That medication starting with B, evil it is. And so you've got the ongoing expense of that and the stress of, you know, what toxicity is going to happen to your animal. And then when they get struck down with some horrific illness, the foul behaviours and the greed and corruption of the vets. So, no, I'm best not to get another dog or cat. Can't possibly put myself through that level of trauma again. It's tragic, isn't it? So I really do need something cute and unconditionally loving to cuddle up to. But anyway, I had a cuddle with my little Coco today, and she's lying in my arms, and the young couple that sat at our table, you know, the young man, they would have been late 30s, I'm guessing. Not that young, but not old either. They were looking at me lovingly, and I said, who could not love this dog? You'd have to be insane to not love her. She's just so gorgeous. She really is the most gorgeous little thing. And so I'm grateful that I got to spend some time with her and my friends, Robin and Peter, and we had a lovely outing. So, you know, on that note, I bid you all adieu, and I'll be back tomorrow, no doubt, all things being well in the space-time continuum. And it's going to be probably just as hot tomorrow, so not looking forward to that. But summer in paradise, people of Earth. Summer in Brisbane. If it's not raining and it's seethingly hot, I may consider taking myself off to Mudlow Island for a few hours, just to have a swim in the sea and relax and be in the ocean, which I desperately crave in this hot climate. And I'll see how I go though, because sometimes it's best just to stay home and sit under the frangipani tree and read you stories and have the air conditioning and not waste money and petrol running around places. And you know, I'd have to go there alone anyway, so. But then I might meet people on the beach and that are friendly. You never quite know what to expect. Last time I went with Jared, actually, we had a lovely day together. When was that? Must have been November. I think it was before that dreadful Bondi shooting, which was the last time we went out together. We were out at the book fest when that happened. But so I think it was late November or early December, we went to Cuchimudlo, and we went to the restaurant there and ordered, you know, a nice meal for lunch. And Jared had gone up to order the meals actually, and I was sitting, and it was very hot that day too, and I was just fanning myself with my fan, just, you know, because it was hot and I'm waiting for Jared. And this couple of men, like my vintage, were over at another table observing me, indolently, nonchalantly fanning myself. And next thing I know, I was quite surprised actually. It was very kind. One of the men came over with a glass of water, and he said, "I saw you fanning yourself and I figured you must be hot, so I brought you a glass of water." I was a bit taken aback, it was a bit astonishing, because he knew I was there with my friend, you know. He wasn't hitting on me, I don't think. He was just being sweet, nothing sleazy. So anyway, I just thanked him. I was really quite taken aback by that. I thought he must be a local living there, and like the look of me trying to act all cool as I do, as I have terrible anxiety. It's got worse in social situations, much worse than it used to be, probably because I've been isolated for so long. Even today, you know, I had a lovely time, but I was terribly anxious. At one point, my friend Robin stood behind me and gently rubbed my back, and was very kind and affectionate, because I think she could see I was a bit of a wreck actually. I try to hide it, but you know, I'm not very good with masking my facial expressions, so kind of not hard for people to read that I'm a wreck. So it makes it very difficult for me to be out in public and actually meet people now. Wasn't so obvious or so bad, I don't think, when I was out dancing, because, you know, in the night time everyone's a bit sozzled and relaxed, and, you know, you've got the live music and everyone's jumping and jiving. They're not focused on little neurotic, anxious, complex PTSD. Tanya's sitting in her traditional spot, because I always have a spot, people of Earth, funnily enough, like one of those dogs that go round and round 3 circles and then plonk themselves down, and that's where they sit. I always territorially commandeer a spot, usually where I can have full view of the band and full view of the entire club or crowd or wherever I am. But today was fine. We're sitting outside the actual hotel in the fresh air, because we were sitting out with little Coco, and there were tables all along, so from where I sat I could look down, and yeah, you know what, I kind of did it again unconsciously. But no, I didn't, because Peter chose that table actually, so I didn't do that. But anyway, from where I sat I could peruse the whole outside, you know, veranda kind of thing, and just watch everybody quietly and observe. And you know, I like to observe people. I was very quiet. I was quietly looking what people were wearing. And one lady smiled at me because we had a very similar pendant. Hers was more greenish, and of course it didn't have, you know, the surround, because I made that, but hers was more of a proper turquoise actually. This one's the name's just flown out of my head. This one isn't a turquoise, it's a Horlite. But I was admiring hers because hers was more green and quite lovely, and then she must have been looking at me, admiring my earrings, and because you know how women kind of, we look at each other and we admire each other's jewellery and style and dress, and it's just something that women do, you know, not just women I suppose. But anyway, she was admiring me and I was admiring her, and then we nodded and smiled, and because it was quite sweet actually. And then another man got up and walked past. He was, older than me, probably in, I don't know, early 70s. But I sort of did a double take because he had a very exquisite shirt with I think it was silk actually, and very exquisite pattern, and it must have been a terribly expensive shirt. Not that don't get me wrong, I'm not a snob, I don't care. I'm not into brands and Gucci Poochie and Smoochy, but it is nice when you see someone wearing something really, really quite beautiful and amazing. So I took a good look at him and, he didn't turn around and look at me. I wasn't flirting or anything. I was just admiring this very beautiful shirt. So yeah, it was a nice atmosphere actually, because the women were all dressed up. Even my friend Robin had a beautiful dress on, very lovely. And she's very petite and slim, and she just looked very pretty. And then another woman, when we were about to leave, walked past, and she had a cream lace skirt with a beautiful black blouse and then kind of a sash. And I actually turned to her and said, "You look lovely," and paying someone a nice compliment, which is polite and pleasant. She just sort of looked at me like this. I thought, well, that's very rude. I felt like saying, when someone pays you a compliment, the polite thing is to say thank you. But I thought, I'm not here to train these people in etiquette, am I? I'm not. It's not my role. But more and more, it's like people have been evacuated out of their souls. They've just got no basic bloody manners at all. It's foul. And then I wonder if it's me being hypersensitive. Sometimes I can be a bit, notice things when they're a bit off. Can't always put your finger on it. It would just be something like sneering, giving someone a sneering kind of look when you've paid them a lovely compliment. Don't do that, people of Earth. I wasn't hitting on the woman sexually. I'm not gay. I'm not a lesbian. Maybe that's what she thought though. But too bad if she thought that. There's nothing wrong even for an LGBTIQ person to pay you a lovely compliment. The compliment's got nothing to do with sex or gender politics. It's merely a pleasantry, a courtesy, kindness. And so if someone says, "Oh, you look lovely," doesn't kill you to say, "Oh, thank you, that's kind of you to say so," Or if you're a bit embarrassed, at least smile and back your way to the door. Anyway, I'll go there again next month, and no doubt there'll be someone else dressed nice, and I will continue to behave in the way that I see is socially appropriate to do so, and that is, if I see someone looking particularly lovely, I'm going to tell them that. And they'll continue to look at me like I'm some sort of vermin that crawled out from under a gutter, and I'll just have to get used to that, people of Earth, because that's the post-COVIDian epoch. That's what we've created. Some kind of alien consciousness that doesn't know how to receive and transmit kindness. It's a bit chilling. And I thought that was a bit chilling. But like I say, the staff there were very friendly. One young man, the waiter, or bartender, came out, and I had my big glass of ice that I always order with my Jack Daniels, and then I had some empty glasses in front of me on the table because it was my second Jack Daniels, so there were empty water glasses from ice and the empty Jack glass. And he leant over, and then he went to reach for my ice, and then he kind of hesitated. And just as he hesitated, I saw what he was about to do, take my ice glass away, which also grinds my gears when people do that. Or staff members do that. They used to do it, I think, on purpose to wind me up at the Brooklyn Standard, people of Earth. In the end, I took to covering my glass of ice with a little napkin to stop that from happening, because it was annoying to queue up for your drink and a glass of ice and then they take it away from you. It's obnoxious. But anyway, this young man went to take it and then he just hesitated. And then he sort of leant back a bit and I went, good man, please don't take that. That's I'm still working on that one. And even he kind of had to laugh. I see, I'm looking down at this desk and I can see it's a bloody nuisance actually. It needs to be revarnished on average every 5 years. The varnish is going all sticky. I'm going to have to sand it back and redo it. So much work I have keeping up with all my lovely furniture projects and keeping it nice. Last time I wanted to put marine varnish on, but they said don't because it'll sink into the timber and it's really only meant for external use. But the internal polyurethane bloody varnish is rotting and going sticky after only a few short years. But I guess it does get the sunshine beaten down on it in the summer months and 9 months of the feckin' year, so that'll be a contributing factor to it being rotting away slowly on me. Anyway, like I say, it was just sweet about that bartender just noticing that not to take my glass. And without me having to say don't or mine or no or throw some kind of wobbly. So we had a lovely day. We really had a lovely afternoon. Eventually if I go there often, once a month for the musical soirees or afternoons, people will gradually get used to my quirky ways and I'll get used to theirs, and you never know, I might meet somebody that vibes with me, people of Earth. I was impressed that people were very bluesy and a bit alternative and interesting. Even the bartender behind the bar, the young lass, had lots of piercings across her nose and things around her neck, and I noticed they were all titanium, and so they were all rainbow colours and shiny, and lots of necklaces, and she's looking at me with all my necklaces, and we kind of not. Oh, and then she had a fringe, and it was all, she dyed it all different rainbowy colours. Like, she was a very creative young lass. I was very impressed with that actually. Even though she had quite a lot of metal in her face, I don't normally, like I personally wouldn't have more than a nose ring, but I do like those librettes that come down under here. I've thought about getting one of those, but because I have such terrible feckin' teeth, I don't want anything that will chip or break my teeth, because I've had a lifelong struggle with my teeth since I was 13. I got my first abscess. But anyway, I've always thought that would be nice, or one of those that look like, a mole like Marilyn Monroe had, but you can get librettes that go in there. It'd look quite cool, I think. But again, teeth. I'll do almost anything to protect my teeth, people of Earth. Almost. Except brush them more than once a day. The dentists always scream at me about that. But anyway, my teeth have improved in the last 5 years with the taking extra vitamin D. So I noticed I missed vitamin D for about nearly 2 weeks because I ran out and I just hadn't got round to going to the pharmacy. And immediately all my teeth started stinging and hurting. So I've got one there that hurts and one there that hurts, the broken one, and a couple of the ones up here started hurting. I was like, fuck you, teeth. You're just going to have to come into some kind of gnosis, and I'm just pushing it away, hoping that now that I'm regularly taking vitamin D again, that the nerves will settle down again. If not, be another trip to the dentist, won't it? And I'll have to throw an almighty tantrum this time because they keep sending me home without treatment. Just not nice. So, anyway, there's my little old lady worries for one evening. It's boring, I know, I must stop doing that. But I get how Lucrezia felt in the story, having all your teeth out. I really only gave her 1 day off work. It's a bit harsh, isn't it? It's very painful having all your teeth out. Anyway, I really felt for her because I know how grueling it can be. Anyway, on that note, my beautiful people of planet Earth, my subscribers, my likers and commenters who come to my channel to watch me burble on endlessly and sometimes philosophically or spiritually and sometimes humorously, depending on what's been going on in the space-time continuum. And, I appreciate you listening to my renderings of these wonderful stories and participating in our shared experience here on planet Earth. Blessed be from Titania's realm at sacred space. Bye for now.